The Federal Government Committee on the Review of Nigeria's Tax Policy will soon submit its report. What are the issues? Here is one of the members of the committee, ITaiwo Oyedele. Welcome to Business News.
Thank you for having me.
Can you just provide an overview of tax administration in Nigeria?
Thank you very much. So we have pretty much like three legs that make up the tax system. So you have tax policy, which is simply saying that as a nation, this is the direction in which we want to go. And then based on that, you would enact laws to bring it to life, and then the administrators would then administer those laws that have been enacted. But there has to be a coordination between the three, such that there will be input that is going back regularly into policy and use that policy to reshape the tax system. To a very large extent, taxation plays an important role in economic development, in addressing inequality, even for businesses to thrive, creating employment. So it's very, very important. One of the reasons why today Nigeria is struggling is because we don't have money. The money we used to get freely flowing from oil is no longer flowing as it used to be. And there's so many countries, in fact, the most developed countries in the world don't rely on money from natural resources. They rely on taxation. But the thing about tax is you can only make enough money from tax if businesses are doing well and people are prosperous. So policy is at the root and at the heart of people doing well and businesses thriving.
Okay. So, do we need another tax policy?
I would say yes and no. So Nigeria spent about 8 years. In 2002, government set up a study group to look at Nigeria's system. And then in 2010 was when we produced the very first national tax policy for Nigeria. It was approved by the Federal Executive Council. It was approved by the National Economic Council. Unfortunately, 6 years after, we haven't implemented it. In fact, many of our leaders, National Assembly, people in the executive, at the state level, local government, are not even aware of the national tax policy, such that many times the actions we take are in direct conflict to the intents and the clear wordings of the national tax policy. So the Honorable Minister of Finance thought, well, let's implement our national tax policy. But hang on, it's been around for a few years. In countries where they take tax matters very seriously, they look at these issues on an annual basis. So she decided, let's have a committee to review it and see whether there are things we need to add, whether there are things we need to modify, whether there are some we need to remove, because the world changes every day. So that we'll be sure that the document as of today is fit for purpose, and then we take steps to actually implement. So that's the whole idea. So we do need a national tax policy.
Okay, taking a look at our tax policy, what are the things that we need to add?
Yeah, I think it's even more about the things we need to do first,
okay,
to make the system work.
Okay.
So one of the biggest challenges facing Nigerian businesses, especially manufacturers, is multiplicity of taxes. There was a study we carried out for MAN about 2-3 years ago, and in some of the states, if you add up all the taxes they pay to federal government, states, and local government, they were running into 197 taxes. So what that means is, even though Nigeria is a federal state, we want to respect fiscal federalism, which means different levels of government, we have taxing rights, but we should not allow those liberty to impose and enact taxes to get out of hand. Otherwise, everything becomes chaotic. You need businesses to thrive so you can make more money from tax. It's not by wanting to collect all their money now. You kill them, and when they are dead, there will be no tax to levy the following year and the year after. We also have not only multiplicity of taxes is an issue, there's multiplicity of taxing and revenue agencies. Even at the federal government level alone, We have the FRS that's supposed to be the body collecting all taxes. You have customs, you have different agencies. One will collect revenue on communication, some people will go and collect money on licenses, some will collect on permits. The truth of the matter is, the more you have those different agencies all collecting taxes, the higher the risk of leakages and corruption. Even if there was no corruption and leakages, there will be inefficiency because the collection mechanism is being duplicated. You could harmonize that and have one agency do all of that. And it also helps you with data coordination, which means you can't go to land registry to register your land that is worth 20 million naira and you haven't registered for personal income tax. The system will throw it up and say, how are you able to buy a piece of land for 20 million and you haven't paid any taxes before? You then explain, oh, I'm sorry, it was a gift. Okay, from who? Let's find out that person that gave you 20 million, whether they themselves have paid taxes. So these are some of the fundamental issues we need to start looking at. Nigeria's problem will never be solved by government making more money. Government money will never be enough. The entire budget is not even enough to fix roads alone. So but when you create the conducive and robust policy environment, private sector will drive the economy. Private sectors in many countries provide infrastructure, whether you're talking about road, to ports, to airports, to university, anything you can conceive. Private sector will do it so well. And guess what? Not only will those things work very well, they make money and they pay taxes to governments. We have corporations like Apple and Google that make more money than Nigeria as a federation. And these are organizations. You can imagine when they pay a percentage of their profit to the US government, that's why they have $6 trillion they collect in taxes every year.
Okay, while a group is talking of multiplicity of tax, we also have the challenge of so many individuals and groups that are not even in the tax net. How do we deal with that?
Yes, that is true. So what happens in Nigeria is only very few people are paying taxes. And those very few people are overtaxed. And then there are so many of us who are not paying at all. So based on the Joint Tax Board revelation recently, there are only 10 million individuals in the tax net in all the 36 states of the Federation, including the FCT, who are registered for personal income tax purposes. Our population is about 180 million. Our workforce, if you take out kids and children and elderly and people who are retired, our workforce based on the National Bureau of Statistics is 77 million. So you're asking yourself, how come it's only 10 million people we have in the tax net? Take value-added tax. The Honorable Minister of Finance said recently that the compliance rate of value-added tax is 10%. So 90% of businesses that should be charging VAT are not even registered. So which is why we said the conversation in Nigeria today should not be about introducing new taxes or increasing the rate of the existing one. That would be misdirected. Wrong priority. It's about expanding the tax base. Let's get individuals registered with tax authorities nationwide to be 60 million, not 10 million. Let's get VAT compliance rate to be 90%, not 10%. And the revenue we are talking about today and the budget deficit will disappear because we have more money than we've ever had in the history of this country if people just decide today to comply and do the right thing. And even if they choose not to comply, government should enforce the law. The law is there. If it hasn't been repealed, we have to obey. But I also have to say that, many people justify the reason why they don't pay tax because they say we don't see taxpayers' money at work. And this is where government comes into it. So a lot of the people have not been compliant, but even government too hasn't been spending the money in a way that is convincing for people to come forward and pay. We now need to address all of that. It should not be one before the other. It should be at the same time. People must pay and government must be transparent and accountable to the people for how they utilize the money.
Okay, everybody has a role to play.
Everybody has a role to play.
Everybody must pay.
Absolutely.
Because I can imagine if we can get about 50 million into the tax net now, and then we'll have like 60 million, like you have said.
Yes.
And then, of course, it will be used for the purpose intended.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think underground economy is also an issue here. So many of these people were yet to capture they don't even pay tax. That's the bottom line. So, what do you do in such circumstances?
You're right. So we have the informal sector.
Okay,
it's huge. It's even bigger than the formal.
Yeah.
And then we have the hidden economy. So there's the formal sector, there's the informal sector, there's the black or hidden economy. Now, the informal sector are just guys who are doing business and they're not under the radar of everything they're doing is legal, but they're just not in the radar of governments. They do things on their own. You find the Okada riders, the pepper sellers. There are many. So in any country, you find a lot of that. What you need to do is to develop a strategy of carrot and stick. You go to them and say, we can help you. In Nigeria, the best way to reach out to them is through associations. In fact, I met a guy who told me that he's a member of the Association of Self-Employed People in Nigeria. I've never heard that before. So there are associations for everything, tomato sellers, Okada riders, taxi drivers, everybody has associations. Go through them. So what are your pays? Government is here to help you, but you also need to contribute. It might be 100 naira, it might be 1,000, but they will start paying. The more difficult one is the black economy, the hidden economy, and that's where people do mostly things that are illegal. When people steal money from government or from anywhere, that's resources flowing around. It's not captured for tax purposes. So when people do illegalities, nobody is encouraging it. Maybe they're dealing in drugs or prostitution. They make money as well. It's hidden economy. It's not a formal sector. But the way to do it is to try and have a lot of technology, intelligence, and whistleblowing. So when money flows, there's a way you can track it around the world. So when I track the money, even if it's corrupt proceed, I'll ask you to pay the tax first, and then ask you, where did you get the money from? And then send it to EFCC to recover the full amount.
You first give me money, give me tax, and then you can face prosecution.
You can face prosecution after that. So those are some of the issues, but Nigeria needs to have a deliberate policy. What we do now is try and error. And sometimes we look very confused. We try this one, if it doesn't work, we withdraw it and put another one there. Even some of the things we have now were laws that we inherited from our colonial masters. You know, the Stamp Duty Act is a law of 1939. The days where there were no internet. And today, that's what drives the world economy. How can a law that you made when the world was very different, and you want it to fit into the modern day business reality? It's impossible. So which means that even people who want to pay tax find it very difficult to comply with the law because the laws are ambiguous. There are loads of gaps and there's too much complexity. And that's the reason why on the ease of paying taxes, Nigeria is not even doing well. Out of 189 economies in the world, Nigeria ranks 181. We're worse than some countries that are fighting war on the ease of paying taxes. So all of these issues are things we're hoping that as part of the National Tax Policy Review, we'll be able to help Nigeria come up with how best these issues can be addressed. And we're positive that this time around there's a political will to implement so things can start getting better.
Thank you very much, Mr. ITaiwo Oyedele. Always a pleasure to have you on Business News.
Same.
We look forward to having you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the package.
A lot of clothes thrown around.